Carlos Nelson with Cascade Media Group. And today we have a young man running for the school district. Uh, and he happens to be full disclosure. He happened to be one of my neighbors over in Sheridan Estates. And I'd like to wish Mr. Bruce Beatty a good run. Welcome to the show, Bruce.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, thank you. What would you like to know?
I want you, as I always start off, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Well,
And go
uh,
back to kindergarten, as I
go
always
back to
say.
go back to kindergarten. Well, I was born and raised here in Kansas City. As you said earlier, I grew up in Sheraton. I went to J.S. Chick School for elementary. I then went down to University of Central Missouri for my undergraduate, and then came back home and finished up at Rockhurst for my master's in finance. Um, I started working at Farmland Industries in the Cooperative Finance Association. I then went to the city of Kansas City, Missouri, where I retired from there after 33 years. I went to the ATA for a little while and then retired again. Um, and so my entire life has pretty much been here in Kansas City. I love it immensely. Um, my wife is from Kansas City. She grew up in Sheraton as well. Um, we've been married 37 years. Right now, we have three nephews living with us. And I've gotten interested more in the district. And one of the reasons why I'm running for the district is because of those three nephews that are living with me. They're 5, 10, and 11. And just trying to make sure that they have someone to look up to that looks like them is something else that's important to me. I've tried to be very behind the scenes up to this point. I like to help kids when they graduate and they go to college. My wife and I, we put together care packages for them to send them off so they have a good start. Um, and it's just trying to make a difference, even though it's small, just try to make a small difference that's positive to children's lives, which is another reason why while I'm running for the school district board, Subdistrict 5. Um, right now, what we're wanting to do is just be there for the kids of the district.
Could
The
you tell
district,
our audience, excuse me, could you tell our audience what your platform is, per se? What are some of the essential things that you want to see continue to happen, or some things that you feel need to happen?
well, for me, one of my biggest things is I want the district to, or what I'm wanting to do is to advocate to help modernize a lot of the schools that we have. A lot of them are very dated. They're very, um, when you go
The
to work,
infrastructure.
yeah, the infrastructure really isn't where it should be. And we don't take in money from your operating account to try to fix your infrastructure. Um, Creates problems because you don't know if you're going to have that same amount the following year. It's not consistent. Um, and when you add more schools, because we have what I want to call, I don't want to talk negatively about charters because charters are here to stay for us. But if more charters come in, it dilutes the amount of money that we have available. And so, with that in mind, or keeping that in mind, they can lose operating dollars at any point in time. And so it's hard to really put forth a good capital program when you have that kind of uncertainty. Something else that is important to me is we want to ensure students and educators have a what I want to call a safe environment to work and learn in. And if there's a way for us to improve upon what we're currently doing, that would be helpful. Um, Sometimes you go into a school and it feels a little restrictive, having to go through detectors and things like that. It's not the most comfortable of feelings to have when walking through trying to do that. And if there's a way for us to be able to do that without all of that, that would be something wonderful to have happen. What I've seen happen in other schools is they would have badges that would allow people to pass through um, to get access to the school. Now, that works great to give access, but it doesn't prevent um, nefarious characters from bringing things into the school. Now, we haven't had any problems, knock on wood, but we don't want to wait until a problem arises to try to then go back and retroactively take care of things that happen.
Can you do you have any opinion about what the Trump administration is doing and trying to dismantle the Board of Education?
Um, it's a little early to tell exactly everything that will occur from that fallout. What we are getting, or what I'm getting a sense of, is that there will be some reduction in funding available for our most disadvantaged students. Where there may be a lot of Title I dollars that go away. And what Title I dollars do, it will help children with disabilities, learning disabilities, physical disabilities. It helps them get the education. It helps fund accommodations for them to be able to get to school and meet them on their level to help meet their needs. And so,
Do you think the city and the county need to find a way to support uh, the Kansas City School District financially?
as long as there's a financial source to fund the district, um, where it comes from, I'm not too um, I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus. Should the city toss some money in there? The city used to have a 1% tax that went to the school district some years ago. That went to support and keep the districts going. That expired, and I think that was some 25 years ago. Um, and some things that the county sort of shifted in as that was going away. So there was just a shifting of where the funding came from. But right now we have funding that's primarily from the county. We get most of our funding locally here. As to where other jurisdictions, they get quite a bit of funds from the state. One of my concerns with the dismantling of the Board of Education is that when they distribute dollars, those dollars come to the district primarily directly. Um, what I've heard rumors of is that when they get rid of the Board of Education, those dollars will then go to the state and then come to the district. The problem with that is, and I've seen it a couple of times in the past, when if there was $1 million coming to the district that previously came from the federal level, the state would give us the $1 million from the federal government, but then they would take back some general fund dollars and say, see, we're still giving you this, but then they'll change the funding formula so they don't have to give as much from the state coffers as they did before. And so the district would then have less money available to educate our students and our children.
Do you think our public, the general public, and specifically uh, people out the third and fifth district, people of color, do you think that they are engaged in the conversation when it comes to education? They just Kansas City Public Library just had a forum uh, with the candidates, and I didn't have the privilege to attend, but one of our contributors did and took some pictures. And it wasn't a ghost house there, but half the facility was empty, and that made me pose the question: is our community really engaged and involved in understanding how important it is that our education system works, and especially works for the underserved? And I don't think that that can take place unless you have full throated discussion with the people you claim that you are trying to represent. And so, with that being said, I put that all on leadership, and not just in the education department. Leadership in our community should have focused on and seen to it that the word was out so that concerned citizens and community would attend that forum. Could you tell our audience a little bit about what took place at the forum? Because I wasn't there.
Well, what happened at the forum, it was put on by the UMKC students. It was sponsored by Black KC. And the students sort of put the format together. They took care of the advertising. They pretty much took care of everything that needed to have for the forum. So it was put on from a youthful point of view. Having been around and been to several forums in previous lives, it was very different. There was a line dance and there was, let's get it on. But it was a very enjoyable event. They pretty much wanted to understand what everyone's positions were on various topics. There were some standard questions of why you're running, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the students got involved and started asking questions about, okay, what if ICE came to the school? What would you do? How would you affect crime in the school? How would, there was a litany of things that they had brought up. And so there were some very good questions. There were some questions that were a little, I don't want to say left field, but it left a lot of the candidates.
Maybe something to think about.
It gave them something to think about, but they wanted to. I'm not quite sure if I can answer that question because it was very left field, and it wasn't very clear. And when we asked to clarify, it wasn't very easy for them to clarify. So, when it comes,
cutting you off a minute so I can keep my trend of thought.
Okay.
You spoke on it wasn't conventional when I said what it was about, and you said the stage and this and that. And you used the word like it was more in a younger generation's whole atmosphere. It was done all together, not all together different from previous forums. And that really gives you insight on what our young people are thinking and how they're thinking.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
It was sort of, it's not new. I knew they like things in 30 to 40-second sound bites. If you try to explain it too much after that, they will sort of tune you out. But that's just the environment that they're grown up in. There were questions about, well, can we have our phones in the classroom? And it was like, I'm sure there's a time for that, but just in general, yeah, no. Because you would immediately start doing one of these numbers. It's like, okay, got to text somebody. Okay, I'm back with you now. But I understand, when you have things that happen in Colorado and, Sandy Hook and the like, and things in Florida where you had shootings in schools. And if my child would have had their phone, they could have communicated with me. Now, if your child had their phone, they'll be communicating with everybody and not listening to the instructor as well. So it's one of those double-edged swords. I see, yes, you can do it, but it gets a little interesting.
What are one of the main changes that you'd like to see take place in the district?
For me, it comes down to keeping kids safe. That's one of the big ones. Security. Creating a good environment for the teachers. Making sure that compensation is appropriate. The district can't afford to pay teachers, $200,000 a year, even though the teachers may be worth it. but they need to be appropriately compensated to live in the area that we're asking them to live. The housing market in Kansas City has gotten a little outrageous. I've sold real estate, and 20 years ago, houses used to go that for investment. You could pick them up for $5,000 to $15,000. That house in that exact same condition is going for 45 to 75 now. Once you fix it up, we're talking 250 to $300,000. Teachers can't afford that. So we need to, I think we do need to look at and review some of the compensation packages that we have. We recently did that, or the school district recently did that and made some adjustments upward, but we may have to look into that a little bit more, given the current market.
Yeah, I uh, feel that the business community could be doing a little more,
Mhm.
uh, and that's why I brought in the city and the county because Kansas City is definitely expanding and growing,
Yes.
and uh, the housing situation is atrocious, and you want to bring in professionals, and they're having to choose between going to the suburbs where they won't have to pay for their kids to get a good education, or want to live the cosmopolitan type lifestyle downtown, the co-ops and everything, but then you have to put a great deal of money outlay to send your kid to private school, and that I don't think that's a sustainable formula. And as my godfather called the capo would always say, if it's not good for all of Kansas City, I have no business participating in it. And I think that uh, we say we want to have a A1 city. You can't have that if the education system is broke down in the urban core, and
Right,
and there's not enough investment. So I
right.
think I asked you previously off camera, what did you have to say about like the downtown council and the corporate community? Do they have a responsibility to invest in the district?
Yes. A lot of things that are happening at the federal level. A lot of corporations are getting a huge benefit from that. So it's only fair or equitable that they take some of that and reinvest that back into the district itself. We do have some corporate sponsors out there currently. Um, in light of the benefit that they will be getting from a uh, um, tax-based point of view, they can put a portion of that back into the district so that we can educate the people that they need to work at those corporations. We have a lot of corporations around here that are in biomedical fields. We don't have a lot of programs in the district currently that would get students ready to go into that particular field, or even to feed into UMKC's medical program. And that's something that I think corporations should invest into the district to help with that so that we can produce what they need.
When I had interrupted you the last time, what I have wanted to say was when you talked about charter schools, I wanted to cut in because I didn't realize until a couple of years ago that the the base is shrinking of students that are available, and charter schools and public schools, they're fighting for fundamentally for students, and funding comes along with that as it relates to that funding. I've had the pleasure to work in the district, not the Kansas City School District, but at a charter school to create a media program. And I looked at some of the challenges that are in all the schools when the kids are misbehaving or doing some things that they really should be expelled for. they tend to keep them so that they can keep the funding, and that has to me has a dynamic effect on the rest of the school when you have unruly kids and different things, and you really can't do too much about it. Do you have any feeling on that?
Um, yes. Um, and I understand what the district is doing. Um, there was a short period, well, I won't say a short period, there was a period of time among schools in general where if a student acted up, they were immediately expelled, um, kicked out, suspended, call it what you will. And it wasn't equitably applied. Some students will get an expulsion and you're out for a month. Other students, depending on their family heritage, would be out for a day or two. And so now a lot of schools have put together handbooks, and KCPS has put together a handbook as well, that sort of lays out, okay, if a student does this is the consequences of that. And I'm very supportive of that program because it evenly applies the punishment to the offensive action that took place. Um, I would like to say sometimes I would like to see an exception to the rule, but once you get one exception, the whole, you've now messed up something that works. Um, I think is some flexibility ability to that, but I like to, when it comes to discipline, keep things as neat and clean as possible. Everybody understands it, if you throw rocks at somebody's head, this is the consequence of doing that. You don't get a pass because you're my son or my nephew, even though I'm on the board, you know.
You bring hold on, you bringing back. You got some experience bringing back in my mind. I remember when arbitrarily they were expelling black males and what have you, and it was uneven how the discipline was dispensed.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in the news. That was like 20 years ago. Uh, just like the hair issues over the last 10 years.
Yep.
Uh, yeah. All right. So I
It's
see
like,
you keeping up with what's going on.
hey, I always have a kid in one school someplace. We had one of our youngsters had dreads, and that was not an acceptable school hairstyle. We're like, but it's culturally appropriate. It's like it's well mannered. It's always clean. It was combed. It didn't smell. What more do you want? Well, it's not straight and it's not this, and it's like, okay, come on. He also couldn't wear an afro either because that wasn't an appropriate style either. So you just have to, work with what you have to make things more equitable for the youth you're working with.
I like that word equitable. So would you would you like to before we close out deliver any message to our audience?
Um, One, I'd like for them to support me, Bruce Beatty, and vote for me April 8th for the Kansas City Public School Board. I would also like to thank Cascade Media for having me on to help share my ideas about the district itself. Again, I'm very into, I want the schools to be safe. I want a good learning environment for the students. I'm supporting the bond issuance. We haven't had one in 60 something years. And I just wanted to make sure everybody turns out and vote.
All right. Uh, well, we here at Cascade, we want to wish you the best as we do with all of the candidates, and we say may the best person win. And if you are fortunate to win, that you keep your word and your promises that you made in your campaign once you get in office. Uh, so, as we always close out here at Cascade Media Group, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself.
This is brought to you by Kansas City Business Association, working to improve our community.